Hi everyone, so in this video you will learn how to print a pseudocode for how to write pseudocode for a given pattern, right? So in this question we are given the following pattern and we want to write a code which prints something like this, right? So in the input we are given n, which is the number of rows. So in this case you need to print 4 rows and rest everything you have to make out yourself, right? So there are few observations that you have to see in this problem, right? So those observations are like this. uh okay, so you will see if n is 4 you have to print 4 number of rows, right? So you will need a loop to print each row, and each row contains some numbers, right? So let us observe what we need to do, right? So let's talk about observations first. Okay, so our first observation is you have to print n rows, which means you will use a loop from 1 to n. Okay, another observation is you have to print one number in the first row, two numbers in the second row, three numbers in the third row, fourth numbers in the fourth row, which means you have to print I numbers in the ith row. Okay, or you can say you have I number of columns in the ith row. Okay, and third is the value of the number is linearly incremented. Value of number is linearly incremented, which means from 1 you go to 2, from 2 you go to 3, and so on. Which means if you create a variable called value to print, every time you will say okay, value is going to be updated as value plus 1, right? This is what you need to do. So let us start by reading n, right? So let's say okay, let's read n. So I'm going to write the pseudocode here, right? And then in your mind you need to keep a track of what row you are printing, right? So let's say this is row 1, this is row 2, this is row 3, this is row 4. So we are creating a variable row. This variable will not be printed in the screen, but it maintains what row you're working at. So row is initially 1, and what about the initial value? So that is also 1. This value that you're going to print, this is also. So what we need to do, we need to put a loop for the rows while row is less than equal to n. We need to do something. And finally, in the while loop, we will also increment the count of row by row plus 1, right? And this logic we will write up now, right? So this is end while, right? So this loop will work n number of times, right? That means it will go to every row. In every row you need to print certain columns. So as we discussed, we have to print columns same as the row number, right? So we can say okay, the count of column is 1, and while this column count is less than equal to row number, which means for the first row it will work, this loop will work only 1 times, for the second row it will work 2 times, for the third row it will work 3 times, right? We have to do some work. What we need to do, we need to print the value. We have to print the value. Okay, remember I'm not using double quotes here, because if you use double quotes the string val will be printed, but we want to print the variable of the value of the variable val, right? And then we can say okay, let's update val as val plus 1, right? So why we are updating this val inside this loop? Because in each row also the numbers are linearly incremented, right? So across the columns in each row the numbers are linearly incremented, and you also increment the count of the variable columns, column plus 1, right? So this is what you need to do inside the this is what you need to do to print each row, right? So this will print one row, and this while loop will print all rows. And finally, one more thing that is left as of now is when you are printing everything row by row, right? You need to switch the line, right? You need to go from the first line to second line to third line, right? So once all the numbers are printed in the row, you need to print a special character which is called a new line character that basically allows you to switch the lines, right? Once you have printed the row, you will print a new line character, right? And that's it. So this code, this pseudocode is going to print the following pattern, right? So let us also dry run it for n equals to 3. Okay, let's say n is 3, then you can say value is 1. So we have a value bucket which is now 1, and we have a row bucket, row is 1, and we have column which is also 1, right? So while column is less than row, so row is less than column, we will print the value which is 1, and we will say value becomes 2. So this value becomes 2, column becomes 1, so column becomes 2. So this loop will stop and we will come to the next row because of print new line. So we come here, and again row number is less than n while row is less than n, so we go here, row is less than n, 1 is less than n, so n is 3. So then again we do column equal to 1, we set the column back to the 1, and we print the value which is 2. We increment the value to 3, so this value becomes 3. We increment the column as 2. Okay, so this column becomes 2. So 2 is less than equal to 2, so we print the next value which is 3, and we go to the next line, because this time now the value of column becomes 3. Okay, this value becomes 3. So if you carefully run the loop, you will see this value becomes 3, and 3 is, sorry, this is 2. 3 is not less than equal to 2. So you stop this loop, you come out, you print a new line character, and you increment the row count. Okay, so row count now becomes 3, and you print now the next value which is 4. You print the next value which is 5. You increment the column, so column is 1 now, and so on, right? This you can dry run, and this is the pseudocode for this uh, pattern example, right? So I hope you got an idea how you can write pseudocode for a given problem. That's all. See you guys in the next